There's something about that first drive, the first burnout, signing the title, bringing home a car you've dreamt about your whole life. For me, taking Felony on its first ride out of my friend's garage in California felt very surreal. It almost didn't feel like mine. I felt like I had to reinvent it, create my own version, and that feeling and everything it's pushed me to do, now it feels like mine. I had been sick for a week. I still wasn't over it. I kind of stepped away from the car and I was down for the count. I came back not really knowing where I should start. I knew I was on the last phase to get this thing on the road, but still a lot of work to be done. I look back at thinking about I wanted this to be at Overcrest, and it's silly to me now because there was no way. Even if I hadn't have hurt my back in the summertime, there was no way I would have been finishing this thing on time. But you kind of need that. You need that goal. Like I said before, you need the goal to push yourself to continue working on it. If you got to move your target around, hone in on it a little bit more. The idea is that you just keep working at it. You don't say, I'm not going to make it. Well, there's no point. I just won't do it right now. Because that's how they stall out. That's how these projects just sit on jack stands forever and they never get done. Or you're just chasing perfection that's never going to come. That's something I've learned the hard way with my past projects, and especially on this one, is you can chase that perfect image in your mind, but the better thing to do is just start working at it and see how it ends up. Of course, I got sidetracked. I wanted to do the wiring, but I immediately jumped on to installing the steering wheel and the horn button just to get it all out of the way. Basically, I just started looking at what boxes can I empty out and get on the car. Putting the wheel on was very straightforward. It's just a Grant adapter for a Flaming River column, or basically a GM spline with a 3-bolt old school style mount. The most difficult part of installing this was actually getting the horn button to sit on the mount. These are actually a press-on unit where you have to get these little tabs lined up, and the best thing to do is just beat the thing until it clicks into place and the horn functions. With the steering wheel mounted and horn functioning, I turned my attention down to the bottom of the steering column to the clutch pedal. For this, I would be fabricating a mount for the master cylinder and somehow figuring out how I would get the lever of the Mustang clutch pedal to work through the rod end of the BMW Master. Originally, I had thought about using the E46 aluminum bracket for the pedal assembly, but there was no really feasible way to get it to bolt in and out and maintain serviceability. I wanted something that I could just take out 2 nuts and bolts, pop it out, pop the hose, and that's it. This actually took me almost a full day just to make this little bracket and make it work the way that I had wanted. I drilled some holes in some welded steel tubing that I had left over and cut a notch so that the hose for the reservoir would clear and go through the firewall. I then bolted the master cylinder to it, cut it to length, and then decided to sandwich another piece of tubing on the back, shaped to the firewall hump, so that I could weld it in place and actually have it be somewhat strong. I've been in and out of the footwell like a million times this morning. Haven't talked on camera much. I'm still sick and like, it's been going on for like 4 weeks and I'm so over it. Anyway, I got the clutch master cylinder pretty well mounted in there. I now have to work on the pedal side of things because I need to make a pin that the rod end on the master cylinder can slip into, but I also have to make it so I can take that pin out so I can service it. I'm trying to service everything. I could just take a bolt and weld it to the lever of the clutch, but then I'll never be able to get that master cylinder out with like cutting shit, so I don't want to do that. The welds up in the firewall where I welded on my bracket are absolutely horrible, like absolute dog shit, but it's in there for now. I'll clean them up a little bit later. I just want to see if I can get this thing in there and serviceable and functioning, like actuating, and then I might plumb it to the slave cylinder and see if I can actually actuate the clutch. That would be pretty cool. This all started as like I was gonna do wiring, and then like the first loom that I had to pull, I realized I have to pull it over where I want the clutch master cylinder, and I needed to be able to know where the clutch master was gonna sit before I started running the wiring. So it's one of those things where I wanted to do something, I ended up doing something else because it's in the way. So it's kind of just the trickle down effect of take care of the things that you know you have to be able to service. Figuring out how to make things absolutely serviceable and not a friggin' nightmare to get in and out. That's one of the biggest challenges with this thing is I don't want to just weld shit together and stick things together that aren't going to come out properly later. I want nut and bolt. I want to be able to just pop things out, replace OEM stuff. That's what kind of my goal is. That's why I made the transmission tunnel bigger for the trans. That's why I've situated the motor on BMW stuff. It's just trying to make serviceability paramount. Next thing we'll do when I come down is I'm going to take the pedal assembly and the dash back out, and then I'm going to get that all modified to take the pin for the master cylinder, and then we should be able to start hooking up the clutch. So, see you guys in a bit. So once again, with the interior stripped out, put the steering column and the pedal assembly onto the bench to get ready and make some sort of connection from the rod end of the master cylinder to the clutch pedal itself. I thought I could use one of the holes that was already pre-drilled in the lever to make some sort of a bolt with a pin on the end, but I ended up deciding that it would be just a lot easier if I recessed a little divot in that hole to accept a larger bolt and then weld a nut to the arm so I can just bolt in a pin from the outside of the rod end. It's a lot less awkward. There's a lot more space on the left side in the interior, so I can just stick a socket in there and unbolt the master cylinder if I have to. The bolt through the rod end is simply a temporary solution until I make a proper pin fitted to the sleeve of the rod end with threads on the end of it. But works for now, everything is in place. It's time to turn my attention to the dashboard. Heading back towards the idea of getting the wiring done, I wanted to mount the gauges and get the dash wired itself to bolt everything in place and just be able to hook everything up. Started by laying out where I wanted to put the gauges on the car. Laying out where I would drill the holes is pretty simple. I just used the template from the box. It's exactly what it came in off the shelf. Centered it up on the dashboard and also set it underneath the bar that is going to be bolting to the chassis itself that's hidden behind the aluminum. Once I had all my measurements and it laid out, I just copied it with felt, found the dead center of each hole so I could drill it, started going at it with the hole saw. These Autometer chrono gauges are absolutely beautiful, and I wanted to make sure that the face they were mounted in was strong, so I riveted in a front L bracket of aluminum, then proceeded to cut open the hole for the steering column, and I turned my attention to making supports along the back so that the face wouldn't bend and buckle or vibrate around. I got some practice on the TIG with aluminum, but I was actually getting furious with my lack of success on a few welds and burning through. Eventually I got it solid and I started mounting everything around the gauges, like the aux beam panel, the light switch, the battery cutoff, just all the little accessories. I wanted to have it all mostly mounted so I could start figuring out where the wiring is going to sit. I was able to get the dash and the steering column back in the car, and finally I began turning my attention to get everything wired up. I would still have some switches to figure out along the way, but they would not be difficult to mount with everything bolted to the car. I chose a painless performance direct fit 22 circuit 68 Mustang harness for this project, but in hindsight I probably could have done with a more universal application, like just a generic Ford harness or something like that, because I ended up deleting a lot of things off of this harness, including the engine side of things because I have a BMW harness for that. I deleted the voltage regulator circuits. I also deleted the heater box and all the resistors and stuff like that because I don't need any of it.
All right, I got the full Clark Griswold going on, kicking off this week by wrapping up a bunch of wiring. So today I would like to have the lights wired in, the main power to the fuse block, test them out, hook up the battery and see if they work. Maybe get the light switch and everything and the hazards and stuff hooked up, we'll see. So basically what's left, gotta wire it, make it work with the key, gotta get the cooling system in, bleed the brakes one more time, bleed the clutch. I gotta make one clutch line, which isn't too bad to do. Put the seats in it and try and move it. That'll complete my goal that I have, modified several times now of having the car moving before it snows here, which is, we're not far off. So I'm gonna get to work. I'm gonna start with some wiring, which I'll show you a little bit of, nothing too crazy. Let's get jamming.
So finishing the lights began the downward slope into getting everything hooked up and getting the wiring done. The pattern just continued. Hook it up, test, reevaluate, test again, double check everything, and keep going. I tested the horn relay and the voltage, everything worked there. All the accessories to the gauges and everything were functioning. I was finally seeing things come to life.
Basically, this is me making excuses for why this video is coming out, you know, after 3 weeks of no videos. It's just because this stuff is taking forever and I'm not trying to cut corners and make it so that I burn down the car. And I'm getting close. Just gotta figure out why my taillights stopped working. I'm pretty sure I crossed a fuse. I'm pretty sure I pulled the brake switch earlier and I heard a snap, so I think I just blew a light bulb. I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, pretty crazy to think that I'm almost there. Once all the chassis wiring is situated and done and the dash is tucked away, the engine wiring does not take very long to loom and tidy up, and I just have to make an extension for the throttle pedal. Once that's all in, we got 3 pedals. I got a drive shaft sitting over there, and we're ready to go. So I'm gonna keep picking away at this, and I will see you guys in a few days when it's time to start getting this thing ready for the road.
Spent a few days finishing up underneath the dashboard, making everything safe, keeping things out of the levers for the wipers, and protecting everything. I made mounts to hook up the signal lights in the dash. I got my wiper switch sorted, got the ignition switch mounted, high and low beam switch, and the heater box switch.
This entire chassis wired up, aside from the reverse lights and the license plate light, because I don't have the revalence all mounted up and stuff yet. That's trivial, but everything else works. I've got a working horn, I've got working signal lights, brake lights even. I have the fuel pump wired up to my aux beam panel. I gotta make a loom to run to my Maradyne radiator fan, my Smart Start 16-inch radiator fan, which is sitting on the bench behind you guys right now. This is it. This is the week I'm gonna drive this thing. I'm saying it now, I am not gonna sleep until this car moves under its own power. Whoever you are, I'll call you back. So the big things to do first off this week is I have to hook up the engine electronics. I gotta get the throttle pedal harness extended. I have to mount the ECU, which I'm gonna use the stock mounting bracket and cut it up and drill some fancy little mounts for it. We're gonna mount that on the tunnel so that everything just comes in, makes a left turn, plugs right in, super simple. I'll make a little cover, something for it later. But I do have to loom all the wires so they are protected. I do not want anything to damage those wires, cause any problems. I have to pull the wires for like RPM and the starter and one other thing. And there's also some live leads that I have to pull to the battery. So I have a lot of work to do. I do not have a lot of time to do it. It's getting into Christmas season. We've got like 5 family birthdays coming up. It's gonna be bananas. I'm gonna kick off by pulling this new Shelby style hood that I got for $100. It has one little break right here that I gotta fix up. Probably just using a piece of aluminum riveted in there and strengthen it up. I don't know, I don't really care. It's covers the hood. You could argue that I'm making this car look worse by, you know, leaving panels black and welds and stuff. We're not even close to the bodywork phase yet, and I really don't give a shit. It's a race car. Anyway, I'm gonna start by getting the engine hooked back up and getting it to key on turn over. That's my goal for today. And then after that, we're gonna start looking at the cooling system, getting things mounted up a little more solid, putting the doors back on, putting the seats in, hooking up the clutch, making this thing ready to roll. And we will see it roll by the end of this video. Mark my words. So I'm gonna do a little cleanup, get things organized. I'm gonna start hooking up this motor, get it to crank over with the old Porsche key on the left.
I debated a bunch of times where I wanted to sit the ECU. I decided on putting it on the tunnel just to make it easy to get the loom through the firewall and make the right turn or left turn, depending which way you look at it, and getting it plugged in. I used the stock ECU box and mounts, and I just cut off the excess for the other modules that come in a BMW 3 Series, E46, whatever. I would just drill holes through it and tap some sheet metal screws into the tunnel, as it's super simple and makes for a clean install. With the ECU mounted, the next box to check was sleeving all the wires that come from the BMW relay side and from the engine harness. The hole in the firewall has a sharp edge, and any vibration stuff can easily cut through these tiny gauge wires. I did my best to keep all the plugs and everything organized, but I ended up having some trouble once I put everything in. There's shared looms and stuff that bend back on each other, and some of the plugs bend back on each other and have to be close by, and it ended up just being a harebrained mess to put it all in there and get it like somewhat tidy. I ended up taking the relays and the engine fuses out of their mount because I was going to try and mount it with the box, but it didn't work. So I took them out and just kind of tied them off in place just to get it driving. I was so over it, I just wanted to get it done and make it work. Moving on down the list, the next thing to do was add the extension to the throttle pedal input. I thought I would have to extend it anyways. I didn't actually end up needing to do it because the throttle pedal sits so close to the ECU on that side of the tunnel that I literally just soldered the wires together that I had previously made spade connectors for. Now I had to physically mount the pedal in the car. This BMW throttle pedal body is made of plastic with a metal insert through the bottom that accepts a bolt. Basically what I did is I cut the angled pieces off and flattened out the bottom. I drilled 2 holes, one to accept the bolt and one to accept the indexing pin beside the bolt hole. I then realized that it would be too floppy and that bottom bolt would not hold the entire thing together without breaking it. So I cut a piece of aluminum, bent its shape to sit flat on the toe kick, and epoxied it to the side of the body. I had to let the epoxy set overnight, so I turned my attention back to the ECU side of things and hooking up all the power leads underneath the dash. And that was the last piece of the puzzle to hook up the BMW side to the Mustang. From there, I turned my attention to bleeding the clutch and getting it to function without leaking. I ended up using all the OEM BMW lines. I just had to rebend the hard line, which worked pretty flawlessly. I have a little motorcycle clutch fluid reservoir that I mounted on the old hinge mount for the Mustang. And with that, we got 3 functioning pedals in this car, finally. The next thing to hit on this marathon down the checklist was the steering shaft, hooking up the column to the BMW rack. Basically, I would just be using 1-inch double D steering shaft from, I can't even remember where I bought it. I think it was Summit, maybe even Amazon. You can get it literally anywhere. You can get it at your auto parts store. And I use Flaming River adapters, one side for a BMW steering spline input, and the other side is just a 1-inch universal for double D, and it worked perfectly.
Jamming all day again, and I've got the steering wheel hooked up with steering shaft down to the rack, and I've got the bushing, which is basically just a rubber piece of hose cut in half and sleeved, around the steering column to the little pinch point. That's all solid, so the steering is taken care of. I just have to hook up the lines and mount the reservoir, which I have to clearance a piece to do that. But I'm up in this section right now, and I've been looking at this intake boot here, which is gonna be giving me some issues. I have a very tight area between the shock tower and the boot to make a 90, possibly landing the filter somewhere over here. I do have an elbow on this Perrin boot that I have from the GC8. When I bought the EJ257 IAG block that was with it, it had a gigantic turbo on it with a huge 3-inch inlet, and this is the inlet hose for that. And this tight 90 here might be the ticket for making this turn and getting just a piece of aluminum to go straight out and make some sort of an intake that we can stick a filter on and stick the MAF on. So I'm gonna see about how I can make that work and still feed idle air to the idle air control valve here. And yeah, basically I'm just gonna tape a line, cut this, see if it works. Pretty simple. If I can't make this work, then I have to go looking for aluminum tubing and pie cuts and all sorts of fancy shit. If I have to, I'll just throw a sock over it and run the intake like that for the first drive. I really don't give a shit at this point. Really tight in here. Basically, I have to find a way to make either this elbow work with a super tight 90 bend, which I also forgot I have a coupler that goes to the stock MAF side, so I might cut that piece of Perrin pipe and see if I can use the coupler and that 90 to make the bend come straight out this way. So I'm gonna try that, and then I'm gonna try just using the 90 to come straight off the throttle body. So that little bend looks like it's gonna work. It's gonna be just making out with the shock tower until I can make something tighter. But to get the car running, it's gonna do the job because I just need to get a little chunk, 3-inch, and then I can just use the stock MAF housing, stick a filter on the end of it, and we're good to go. I need like 4 hose clamps, something like that. And I got a little place down there if I want to make a bracket. So that'll work. That's sick. That's, yeah. Okay, so I can kind of keep that one in the back burner, cross that off the list for now, because it's too late to get any piping. So I'll have to do that tomorrow. I swear I had a chunk somewhere in here, but I can't find it for the life of me. Shocker. So we'll call that good for now. And look at what else we can cross off the list tonight.
And so the very next thing on that checklist was modifying this plug, which is X60004 on the ECU. Pin 22 of this plug controls vehicle speed signal input to the ECU. And the reason I need this on this car is because the map for fuel and air is adjusted by reading vehicle speed. I had to put a wire into that pin because I had previously thinned out that plug, not thinking that I needed it. Basically, I just took an idle pin from another part of the plug that had a wire attached to it and plumbed it to pin 22, which I would be putting a signal to from the front wheel speed sensor.
It's Wednesday right now, and I'm not gonna really stop working to talk to you because I need to drive this thing by tomorrow. It is monsoon levels of rain here right now, and last time I checked the weather, tomorrow's the only break we're gonna have. And after that, I gotta get a video edited because it's been 3 weeks of filming this and I need to make a video. It's kind of my goal with this whole thing, you know, share it with you guys, share it with the world, put my thoughts on YouTube, whatever. Anyway, If I don't finish it by tomorrow, Tony Angelo is gonna lose the shop or something like that. I don't know. Tomorrow's the day. I'm confident that what I have left is gonna be not too difficult to accomplish. And you know, the car is not gonna be done by any means, but it'll be good enough to take down, it'll be good enough to take around the block. So right now I'm working on the vehicle speed sensor signal. I found this out from a new friend, Gabriel, on Instagram. He was kind enough to remind me that I need vehicle speed sensor, or vehicle speed signal, sorry, input, VSS, input to the MS43 DME. And he said you can get it from a Hall effect sensor or like a diff speed sensor or something like that. I happen to have a 3-wire sensor on the front right here. On the BMW, it actually comes from the right rear. And I tested this the other night with the AC on the voltmeter, and this yellow wire is actually sending signal once you power and ground the sensor itself. So I'm gonna try and use this, hopefully it works, because the vehicle speed actually helps the DME do fuel and air trims and helps it run better. It runs like shit, missing like apparently 200 horsepower. If you don't, it just limps out. So that's when it, that's when it starts to see like heavy throttle, stuff like that. I don't know. I'm not a tuner. I don't know 100%, but I just know that I need to plumb this to the ECU. I did a quick swap with the pins. I don't have the original wire in there because I thinned out that harness and accidentally took it out. So I just took a dead wire that was on that plug for the throttle pedal and swapped it over pin 22, which is the pin on that plug that goes to the DME that receives the vehicle speed signal. So that's where I'm gonna run these wires to. We got the red wire is power here. I'm sending this to my bus bar underneath the dash. Yellow is the signal for the vehicle speed sensor. And this, of course, is a ground. On the BMW side, it's yellow, black, and brown. Brown is ground. And black is power. Doesn't make any sense, but it's the sense that I'm going to make of it. Let's make this thing move, and I'll see you guys in a little bit. Finally, it was time to tackle the cooling system. I had said it so many times already. It was finally time to plumb it and get this thing working properly. Originally, I'd opted to use an E46 stock cooling system just to make availability for parts on the road and stuff easy. Just give your make and model. You can get a radiator anywhere. I do it for the GC8. But the liability of all the plastic parts and fittings on the BMW cooling system made me shy away from it. I decided to upgrade to a Chevy style aluminum radiator that I got from Mopac in Langley. It's a Performance World radiator. You can buy little rubber isolators to mount it in the bottom. You can buy pins for the top. You can buy everything to mount this in anything. I decided to just use the rubber isolators to rest it on in the frame rails here. Just mounts with M8 hardware, so I just had to drill holes through it, bolt it to the frame, and then sit the radiator on top. I also put some aluminum brackets on to bolt it to the core support. I just recessed some rib nuts into the top sheet metal of the core support and bolted it in place. Super simple, super easy. 2 bolts and it comes out. Before making the lines to go to the radiator itself, I wanted to put in the replacement water pump that I had bought.
Stock BMW water pumps come with a plastic impeller. And when I took my old one out, it was actually already broken, so I'm glad I didn't run it. This metal impeller is a solid upgrade. After that was in place, I decided to put the belt on so everything was just ready to go and fire up once I got the radiator and the cooling system plumbed. For the radiator hoses themselves, I went to the local parts store and looked at their stock of pre-made hoses and just found bends that I could make fit and cut. Grabbed 2 AC Delco hoses and just cut them short of where the fittings to quick connect to the thermostat had to go and clamped them on. Very straightforward, very simple, nice clean install. Moving right along down the list, and after I found out I had no stuff to make the heater core lines, I decided to extend the shifter rod. Basically, I wanted to just make it with stuff I had lying around, and I cut it in half, found a bolt that fit the inside diameter, cleaned it all up, and got it ready to weld together. There are options to buy aftermarket units that you can adjust and are a little bit more robust, but on the budget and quick and dirty, didn't have to waste time waiting for shipping or going to the parts store. This was the solution. I made sure it was all nice and straight and just tacked into place. High heat, just nice and easy. Done deal. To properly test out the shifter, I needed a great place to sit. It was finally time to bolt the Scheel 101s that I had gone and picked up from my friends at Scheelman USA back in September. So excited, as I haven't seen these in the car with the interior painted and the dash and the steering wheel and everything in place. I was super excited, and I was very happy that the vision in my mind was coming to life. These seats are incredibly comfortable. They have a good degree of reclinability, so you can still be comfortable on longer trips, but they hold you in place just like a classic race car should. This style of seat was first seen in the BMW CSL 3.0, the Batmobile, the famous race car of the 70s. And it's kind of funny because the guy that headed up that group that made that car a success was the same guy that headed Ford's racing program in Europe and made Capri's championship-winning cars in touring car. And it's funny that these seats share a history between that gentleman and Ford, and they're now in my car that has a BMW engine. It's very fitting. I think these things are perfect, and I cannot thank Scheelman enough for supporting this build, for supporting what I do, and being such great friends. It's a good time to bust out the jet boil from your camping gear when it's time to make heater core lines. I had to slip 3/4 inch heater hose over these BMW Quick Connect fittings, which are more of like a 7/8 to 1 inch size, so it's quite a bit different for rubber hose to fit over. Basically, you just boil the water, heat up the hose, use lube, and press like hell to get it over the fitting. You almost don't even have to clamp it once it's on, and once it cools off, it kind of quenches and forms to the fitting itself, but don't expect to take them off anytime soon.
So, I have oil in this, I have transmission fluid, diff fluid. I'm going to fill up the cooling system. I'm going to pull off the top radiator hose here. We're going to fill up through the engine block and then the radiator. And we're going to run this thing, see if it gets up to temp, holds temp, see what happens. Put some power steering fluid in it, make a little noise. See how it goes. good.
Finally, after so long toiling over this car, everything was plumbed in together and it was running. Unfortunately, I was seeing leaks from a bunch of the heater core lines that I had made, including in the cabin, because I used fittings that weren't quite the right size and they just wouldn't clamp tight enough. So once the system saw pressure, it overloaded them and it started to drip and dribble. So I would not be able to get it up to temperature with all of these leaks. It would not hold pressure. The best thing I could do, because everything was closed, was to spin the wheels on the jack stands and make sure everything was functioning with the drive shaft and the transmission.
So I redid everything in the cooling system, got proper fittings for those heater lines, and the 90 that I did that was leaking. Checked the thermostat, it's functioning. I think it just didn't wait long enough. So I'm gonna run it, bleed it again, put it down on the ground, check the toe, wait for a quick break in the weather, and maybe drive it.
After about 15 minutes at idle, the car began running really rough, so I decided to shut it off and pull the plugs, check them out, and swap them. With a fresh set in, the car would not start to run. It would only crank and sputter a little bit. After checking a few things over, I decided that the best bet was just to top up the gas, thinking that the center baffle in the tank probably had run dry.
Okay, successful run, cycled coolant, the thermostat opened. So the next thing I'm gonna do is install this Meradyne Smart Start 16-inch fan. It's a big shout out to Meradyne for sending me this for the build. They sent it to me a while ago and everything got postponed, as everyone knows. So I'm very sorry that this is very, very long overdue, but Meradyne is a fantastic company. They make brushless fans, regular brush motor fans. They have this Smart Start system, which is a slower amperage kick, so it doesn't draw on your alternator and affect your idle and stuff like that. They have controllers, they have thermostats, they have thermostatic switches, brackets, all kinds of stuff. They actually make the Summit Racing. It's actually a Meradyne heater box that I have in the in place of my stock heater core. So pretty cool. It's like a marine heater sort of thing. Very universal, very lightweight, which is what I was going for. This thing should have enough CFM. Should have more than enough CFM and power to replace the clutch fan that was on here. And I just think it's gonna be a little bit tighter. It's nice and slim. I am gonna run it to the relay panel that I installed, that aux beam relay panel on a 30 amp or a 20, I think 20 amp. So stick it on a 20 amp circuit and it should be more than enough to control this thing and keep it cool at idle, because the temperature gauge, I don't know if this thing's reading properly. The odometer one is kind of weird and it might be spiking and stuff like that. So I have to check in on that, but yeah, I'm gonna probably do the quick and dirty install just to drive it today. And then I'm gonna come back and properly install it with like some brackets and stuff later on.
There were a few times in this build I thought this moment would never come. It seemed like it was solar systems away. All the rust and metal work, hammering away, painting, seam sealing, scraping crud. It just felt like a mountain that I was trying to climb but just kept slipping and not moving. I did my best not to lose sight of the goal, and it's always been the same. To leave this garage better than when I came in. Whether it's small tasks, cleaning, organizing, figuring things out, making lists. You just got to go in and work at it. And it finally got me here. Finally get to push the loud pedal. did it.